Hey everybody, and today we're focusing on the tzaangors again. So, last time I did a tutorial on tzaangors, I did their skin. This is the same model. So, I'm going to show you how to do the other organic details on the model. Organic details basically means that, that's nothing that they wear. Like the armor, the weapons, or this instrument of chaos. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on the other organic parts of the model, such as the hair, horns, claws, and the beak. So for this, we're going to start with the claws. For this, I'm going to find my darker color. For the claws, we're going to use rhinox hide. Okay, here we go. And it's if you don't have rhinox hide, you could of course use Thondia brown, and that's a pretty good match. We're not going to thin this down because we don't need very much. So for this, onto the claws. For this, we're going to take, if you look at the claw right here, what we're going to do is going to start painting it. Or base coating it. You may be wondering why we base coating the claws with a dark brown. Well, believe it or not, for Kairos Fate Weaver, one of the leaders of the Tzeangor army, actually has a brown claws. But of course, he does have black. But of course, their claws are mostly brown. But if you don't want to use brown, you could of course use just black and then Baneblade brown or Baneblade brown, and it'll look very nice. And for these claws, we're not going to add a wash because these are a flat area. And the reason why you don't want to use a wash on a flat area is because it will pool, which will make you lose detail, and you do not want that to happen whatsoever. Alright, that's the claws base coated. Alright. Now, while we're waiting for that paint to dry, we're going to focus on a different detail. So, we're going to start with the hair. For this, we're going to use a base coat, Jakara Orange. So, shake up your paint. Okay, take some Jakara Orange. Thin it down a little bit if it's quite thick. Okay, so all we're going to do, focus on the hair. For this, we're going to base coat all over the hair. So, all over. And the reason why I'm using my smaller brush is so I don't hit the skin. Because if you use a too big of a brush, it will possibly hit the skin. But of course, it's probably not going to be on purpose, but it's a good thing just to use a smaller brush. And if you ever watch Warhammer TV, you know, like when they pull like the little colors like right against the names of the paint they're going to use? For Jakara Orange, whenever they do that, the base coat color looks actually a lot darker than the actual color itself. My theory is that basically maybe back in an old edition, like when they had like the paintballs or pots, maybe it was a darker orange, but then they decided to lighten up so that way they can actually get the orange color they're looking for. Okay, that's done. Alright, now, I already base coated the horns off camera with Wraith Bone, so we're not going to look into that. For the next part, we're going to focus on the beak. So you may be thinking the beak is probably a bone color, but no, their beak is actually an off yellow. For this, we're going to use Averland Sunset. So, take some Averland Sunset, put on the palette. So, the only thing we're going to paint on this with the yellow is going to be the beak. So if you look right here, look at the beak, and then just base coat it. But you may be wondering, why is it so yellow? But that's because we haven't shaded it yet. So we are going to add a wash to it. Okay, that's it. And for the smaller brush, since we're out here, we're going to focus on the eyes. I forgot to mention the eyes by accident. I apologize. So since we're already using yellow, I'm going to use red for the eyes. For this, I'm going to use a very bright red. For this, I'm going to use Evil Sun Scarlet. So, take some Evil Sun Scarlet, make sure you shake up your paint pot. Just a little bit, not too much. So, all we're going to do, focus right here on the eye, be extremely careful. So all you're going to do is going to do this. Now you may notice I may have got some on the thing, but don't worry, I'll show you how to fix that right now. So we're going to focus on the main color for the skin, which is Blue Horror. So the reason why we're using Blue Horror is because in case you hit any other details. For this, just take some Blue Horror from the pot and put it on the palette like so. So we're going to paint where we hit the eyes. This one is perfectly fine, but we're just going to tidy it up just in case. So for right here, just do the same thing. And there we go, that's fixed. And if you want to leave a little bit of red, that's fine. It would look like green, it would look like glow, which their eyes don't really glow, but you can use it for an added effect. It looks really nice. So, next part, we're going to focus on the washes. Now, we don't need a wash for the claws, but we do need one for the horns. The beak, and the hair. For this, we're going to start off with the hair. For the hair, we're going to use Fugen Orange. So, shake up your washes. Make sure you shake up your wash really good because they might have sediment at the bottom. So always make sure you shake them or else they might separate, which is not very good. So always shake up your washes and your contrast paints. Alright, so for this paint, I'm going to switch to a different brush. We're going to use a medium layer brush since the detail is kind of small. So take some Fugen Orange. Make sure not to overload your brush. And then here we go. All we're going to do is going to put it all over the hair. Be careful not to hit the skin. Don't worry if you do. Just take some Blue Horror out of the pot and just fix it. And you may notice there's some hair on the chest, but don't worry, we're going to get to that in just a second. Alright, with that wash done, I'm just going to wash off my brush and move on to the other one. So, what we're going to do is going to use a different wash. Let me just dry off my brush real quick. The next wash we're going to use is for the beak and the horns. For this, we're going to use Seraphim Sepia. So you may be wondering, why are we using Seraphim Sepia? It's because if we use Cassandora Yellow on the beak, it would look too yellowy. So Seraphim Sepia kind of dulls it down to make it look like more like a yellowish, bony color, like for beaks, like you would see on birds. Shake up the wash, and we're going to stick with our medium layer brush. So all we're going to do, take a Seraphim Sepia. All right. So always make sure not to overload the brush. So we're going to for the Seraphim Sepia, we're going to apply it all over the horns. I'm going to hold it upside down so you can see it. So all over the horns. And the reason why we're using Seraphim Sepia, not Skeleton Horde, which is contrast paint, is because it has a nice light tone against Wraith Bone, so it has the nice natural bone color you're looking for inside the box art for tzaangors. And always remember the back of the horns as well. Alright, grab a little more, make sure not to overload it. And then we're going to shade in the beak. So for here, just focus on the beak. So if you notice, it's dulling down that yellow, but it looks really natural. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to start off with something else. Now we're going to highlight we're going to start with the highlights. While the washes are drying, we're going to start with the claws. So for this, let me just find my other color real quick. So for this, we're going to take a layer paint. Hold on just a second. Let me check it. Okay, so with that aside, my Gorthor Brown has dried up, so I'm going to use a different paint. Let me just find it real quick. Okay, so let me just find it. Okay, so we're going to use Thondia Brown. So you may, if you notice the comparison, Thondia Brown is a lot lighter than Rhinox Hide. So you can use Thondia Brown for the highlight instead of Gorthor Brown, if you wish. Take some Thondio brown. We're not gonna tan it down. We're just gonna put it up here for a little bit. All right, so we're gonna highlight the claws. So for this, you just want to focus very little. So right here, focus on the claw, just on the top part of the claw, just on the top. Same for the other side. And you can leave the claws dark like this, or you can highlight a little more. I just prefer I just like to leave them dark like that. So now we're going to focus with the other highlights. For this, just leave the horns as they are. The horns don't really need much highlight, but I'm going to show you how to highlight them anyway. So for the hair, we're going to start highlighting the hair. For this, we're going to start with Troll Slayer Orange. Shake up your paint. Okay, so take some Troll Slayer Orange, put it on our palette here. Well, this is just my table, but use this on a palette. This is just a spare table. That's why it's really messy. Okay, so we're going to focus on the individual hairs. It may be time consuming, but it's actually worth the process. So for right here, if you look right here, we're going to focus right here. Or what you can do, make sure there's very little paint on the brush, and then you just go like this. So what we're going to do is now do the same on the other side. Just be careful not to hit the recesses. You still want that Fugan orange showing. And the next part of the hair is going to be on the chest and on the arms. This is kind of difficult, but don't worry. Just use a small brush like I'm usually doing. We're going to focus on the chest. So for this, they do have some hairs right here. Also on the shoulders and some parts on the other arm. Let me just look for them. There we go. So right here. And there we go. That's the hair done. So now what we're going to do is going to focus on the beak. So the beak, we're just going to use a different color. For this, you could use Towelite Ochre. We're going to use a different bit. We're going to use light paint. Towelite Ochre. So, over here. Okay. The reason why we're using Towelite Ochre is because when you add Seraphim Sepia to the Averland Sunset, it actually works like that. Take some Towelite Ochre. For this, not all over on the beak, just on the edges. So for right here, we're going to focus right here on the tip of the beak, on the tips of the beak. So right here. Focus right here. Also on the teeth of the beak. And you may notice this paint is very subtle when it comes to highlighting. That's perfect. That's perfect. That's just what we want. There we go. That's the beak done. All right, now the last thing to highlight is going to be the horns. For this, we're going to take a different paint. For this, we're going to use Screaming Skull. So, all right, so take some Screaming Skull. We're going to put it on our palette right here. We're going to put it on the table right here. So for this, all we're going to do is going to highlight some of the edges of the horn. So barely any paint on my brush. The reason why is we're going to do the same method again. So like this. And also on this part of the horn right here. Just go very across, barely, and just start highlighting. And for the back of the horns, it's just the same thing. Or you can leave the back of the horns dark like this for light variation. Okay, there we go. That's our tzaangors organic details done. So, this concludes today's tutorial. I'll try to do something other than Zine Slide the next time, and I really hope you enjoyed painting your tzaangors. Bye-bye.